absolutely.
Yeah. All right, I know you guys have to have some questions. Who would like to kick off our audience questions? We'll start with you right here, sir.
The Solo movie, and I know it didn't do as well, and before that everybody was hearing about a Boba Fett movie and an Obi-Wan movie, and then after that we heard those are... Is there any insider news? Are they actually going to make the Boba Fett movie and that, or is that on the shelf?
You guys
right
in the back couldn't hear. He was asking, are they actually going to make the Boba Fett movie that we keep hearing about?
Yeah, I am not privy to what they're going to do next as far as movies are concerned. I know that, every other year we were doing these standalone movies. I know right now we're focusing on, we've got this show called Resistance. It's an animation show that's coming out. We've also got Jon Favreau developing a live action series that we're looking into doing. We started shooting on episode 9 with J.J. Abrams a few weeks ago.
J.J. Abrams.
He's working on that as well. And I'm not.
Can you just tell us the whole plot of episode 9?
Oh yeah, actually I have that on my phone. It's kind of boring though if you want to hear it. I can have Siri dictate it if you want to hear it. No, I don't have internet in here, sorry.
Well, actually, just to kind of play off of that, what is that like having JJ come back in the fold? Like, I mean, without getting into like plot details, but working with him again, because I mean, obviously, there was a time when you kind of thought he was done, and now he's coming back into it. Is that a fun experience?
It's Star Wars. No one's ever gone.
Right.
No one's ever.
When we started to do the new movies after George sold Disney, and we announced JJ to be the director, it was another fortuitous thing for me because I'd already done a couple of them. I helped out a little bit on the first Star Trek, and I did the second Star Trek, and I worked on Super 8, so I had this time that I worked with JJ. So when he came on to Star Wars, it was like a natural fit. He's got a very specific style of work, and he thrives on intensity, so when he handed off to Rian Johnson, it was a whole other type of director, who I loved working with. Rian was so clear in his objectives and just a decent human. Having JJ back is exciting. I mean, it's nice to tie up this story. We want to tie up the Skywalker story and have it come full circle with JJ. I mean, we've got the crew that were well familiar with working with them, and it's got a good track record. And I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, one of the great things about the Star Wars sound is that it almost becomes like a character itself in the film. Is that kind of a mentality that you use when you're putting that together to kind of create a soundtrack that's, like I said, almost like its own character?
For those in the back, if you didn't hear it, is creating the sound and making it like a character in the movie, and is that, you're asking if that was something that they do consciously?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to look at it. And we do, George says sound is 50% of your experience in the movie theater, so that's why he gives it the amount of time that we have to create stuff. And one of my favorite things that I did, this is just sort of a snapshot of that character question, is like the pod race in episode 1. George wanted every pod to have a very distinct sound and represent the character that was driving it, so I got to go out and record helicopters and jet boats and jet engines and unfiltered or unmuffled Ferraris, and I got just went all over the place. Yeah, it was really fun going and recording that. I spent months acquiring all these unique engine sounds to bring in to the studio to work with Ben and have them create that, and everything had to be character driven. And another example would be when we did Force Awakens, the character of Kylo Ren was going to wear this mask, and his mask is not meant to keep him alive, it's an intimidation thing. And so the sound of what his mask was going to sound like was very specific. And Adam Driver, when I first met him, you could tell he was a very methodical actor. He was very method about what he wanted to do, and so I wanted to come up with an idea of having him be able to hear what the mask sounds like while he performs, because he had to re-perform every single line that was under that mask, because when the ones you record on the set are not good, they're kind of muffled. And normally when you have a stormtrooper or any character that's under a mask, I just take the actor's voice, I filter it in post-production, and I'm done. But I wanted him, because the mask was purely for intimidation, I wanted Adam Driver to be able to feel what that felt like. So when I brought him into the studio to record, I was at Bad Robot in Santa Monica, and I took JJ's little music studio they had, and we curtained it off in all black, and it had a little spotlight, and I just put it on I went and got a Vader mask. Put a Vader mask like on a little stand in front of him, and just put a spotlight on it, and I made it so nobody else could see him in the room. I was just in the control room in his headphone, and so we started just playing with all the different filters. I had a huge amount of equalization and plugins that I was messing with to make him sound really menacing. And so because he speaks when he gets up on the microphone, it's really quiet. It was really weird. What's that? So it's a very it's a character, so we wanted the mask to be so we worked on that for like 5 or 6 hours coming up with that, how the mask was going to sound. That's the kind of the detail that we did there, and so he could perform it and use the tools of sound as he's performing, and that was a fun for me. Like we just spent a long time together, and then he was so busy as an actor, I would have to, every time we had to re-record him, I'd have to find him somewhere in the world and go bring all my gear to him. And recorded him in like hotel room closets all over the world to get. And there was one scene in Last Jedi where we had to get a few new lines from him, and there was a line that was distorted, and I had to grab a line of him. He's yelling more when they're shooting. Everyone's shooting at Luke in Last Jedi, and so we were in this hotel room in Prague. In the Czech Republic, and he was having to yell more. Like after he was shooting, he was shooting the Don Quixote movie that's coming out, and so I would get him after the set, and he'd go and he'd have to be yelling that in the hotel room at midnight or whatever it was. So people around here must be thinking weird things.
It's funny, talking about the sound. I remember some of you may remember this, but I think it was before the days of like Best Buy. But when you used to go into electronics stores, they used to have this little booth set up where it was the THX experience. And it was like I think like a 10-minute reel.
Yeah,
that
like
you could
the
go in
greatest
and
hits
sit
reel.
down and just experience the THX. And man, if you never realized how important sound was, my God, I would sit there and watch that like 3 times in a row. It was just so
THX
incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, THX Wow. That was what it was. Let's go right here.
I'm a big fan of Foley. I know that in the older films, they use a lot of natural found sounds to create the sounds. So for the newer films, when you're revisiting those old sounds, are you using samples of the old sounds, or are you recreating them?
It's talking about doing Foley work, and when you're reusing sounds from like the old films, are you recreating those sounds, or how exactly do you revisit those classic sounds?
Okay, yeah, Foley, which you're a fan of, is
Not Mick Foley, who's really great.
Oh, yeah.
But,
That's right, yeah.
Different kind of
Very
Foley.
different kind of Foley. Foley is, for people who don't know, like when we make the sound, we sort of break out the track into different elements, and there's the recorded stuff from the set, which is, as I said, is a microphone that's pointed at the actors' mouths, so that's usually anything that's recorded from the set. Then there's the re-recorded stuff where I have to bring the actors back into a studio again if the line was not usable due to like some pyrotechnics or a fan or something it's a creature. So I'll bring the actors back into a set. That's part of one of my jobs, is recording all those lines. That's called ADR. And then we have the sound design, which is everything that's very specific for that movie, like when I was saying the pods in the pod race, and then we have the sound effects, which might be stuff we pull out of library, if it's a door close or something, or like something that's pretty standard that we don't need to go and make a design element out of. And then we have Foley, which is kind of the glue around that. Footsteps, clothing movement, picking up a drink, putting it down. It's anything that's too specific to be found in a library. They'll have Foley artists, like the old-time radio plays, will go through a huge room of props and make all these sounds. They spend a month or two going through the entire movie and recreating every little teeny sound that something might make to give it that life, to make it seem real. And then that's also used for the international versions of the movie, because once you remove the dialogue from people from the English version of the dialogue out, and sometimes it'll be over the top of actual natural sounds that we need to replace. So that's Foley is fantastic. It's like an old-time radio play. There's a huge, and we have my crew of Foley people who do everything from the animation series to the video games to the features, and I use the same crew. And they'll have here's what C-3PO's plate armor sounds like. Here's what Kylo Ren's boots sound like. Here's what a stormtrooper's pack sounds like. There's a great documentary, like we did something for ABC News called The Force of Sound. You can Google it. It's a little making of it. It really talks about our Foley and stuff we did for Last Jedi. If you're curious.
Let's go back over here in the gray shirt. Are you going to be voicing in Battlefront 2?
Yeah, they're bringing in Grievous for the downloadable content for Electronic Arts. That's EA that makes that game, right? Yes, it is. I don't know if I'm allowed to say what I'm doing in the future, but needless to say, I've done everything else in the video game world for Grievous.
So it's a safe bet. You probably
it's a safe bet. Yes, it's a safe bet, but I can't confirm or deny.
Take of that what you will, internet. Right here.
In a three-way battle between Darth Maul, Kylo Ren, and General Grievous.
Maul, Grievous, and Kylo Ren walk into a bar. Yes.
Which one do you think would win in a lightsaber?
Who would win in a lightsaber fight?
Between the three of them.
Okay. Well, Grievous doesn't really have the Force, so that's probably a big disadvantage right there. Even though he is trained in the voice is shot. Trained in the Jedi arts by Count Dooku. I'd say Grievous would probably get eliminated pretty quickly. And then it's probably between Maul and Kylo at that point. So Maul's pretty, like what era of Maul? Do you think like Maul after, like Maul solo Maul like Phantom Menace Maul. Okay, so he's not totally jaded. He actually thinks the Emperor cares about him at this point. He doesn't feel like a pawn. He hasn't been left in like a hole for years and forgotten. I'd go for the solo Maul because that guy's just messed up and pure evil. I'd probably say solo version of Maul would take out Kylo Ren. Sorry, Adam. Hey, bro. I think.
Plus, you have to admit his staff saber is kicking.
Yes, the staff saber is good. Yeah, I'm gonna go with solo era Maul would win that.
Great.
Let's go right here in the yellow shirt.
Sorry.
Is there anything, behind the scenes that y'all, as a sound crew and during production, that you put in that maybe the audience wouldn't necessarily pick up on, but it's a running joke that, that you and your crew only would be aware of?
Is there anything behind the scenes that you guys have put in audibly that maybe the audience doesn't pick up on, but it's kind of a running gag for you guys to do in the sound department?
Well, there was the classic one, which is called the Wilhelm scream. Everyone's probably heard that. Yeah, there you go. There it is. That was a sort of a sound person's calling card that Ben Burt and his colleague Richard Anderson did. They took that old scream out of this library. I can't remember what library it was, but and they used it pretty much in everything. All the Indiana Jones and Star Wars, and it was this very hilarious scream. It has been put in everything, and we kind of retired it after Force Awakens, just because we wanted to start something new. And my colleagues and I have another yell that's very dear to us that we've put in about 5 films that I haven't really talked about. There's that, and then also like in Star Wars, I don't know if you guys remember, but this is a very niche thing, but there's the scenes where in New Hope where the stormtroopers are talking while Ben Kenobi's like sneaking around the base, and they're like, "Hey, you seen these new T-16s? Yeah, some of the guys say those were something good to see. Hey, what was that?" That part. I have a group of actors that I use that do all that. Loop group I was talking about before, and I'll grab actors from the Clone Wars, from the original series, from prequels, and these two fellow actors of mine, Sam Witwer, who actually plays the voice of Maul, and David Collins, who's plays the voice of all kinds of characters in Star Wars video games. He's also the MC at Celebration. So we came up with, what if the grandsons, or no, it would be the, so we've put that characters talking about the T-16s, we've put them in Force Awakens, Rogue One, Solo, and Last Jedi. But we always rev to the next number, like the T-17 or T-8. So those are they're in every single one. And it's very brief, and you can hear it, but we continue that, like those are the relatives of those. And it's always stormtroopers or some Imperial person that's talking about it. So I had to actually make a point of that, which was funny. In Solo, we were pretty much done with the movie, and I couldn't find a place to put it. Like everywhere was too obvious, and it has to like fall into that zone of, you could hear it if you wanted to, but it wouldn't be playing up front. And most of the time I can get away with even sneaking that in without even telling the director, but I don't like to do that usually, because this one was something that I had to like make it, so I was Ron Howard and Kathy Kennedy were in the mix. It was literally the last day of the mix, and I found a place to put one. So I had to like call Dave Collins and Sam on the phone and get them to record in their home studios and set it up and cut it in. And I was like, guys, I'm sorry, I know we're all done, but I just got this one little section here, I gotta just put a little line in there. And they were like, what are you doing? And then I told them the whole story about everything. And they were like, that's awesome, keep doing that. So that's the kind of thing that like Lucasfilm really cares about, you know, that the legacy that has come before, and also putting something out there that, you know, fans might attach to, and we're all fans working on it too. So that's those fun little moments. Yeah.
Okay, let's do a couple more. Let's go back there. Yeah, stand up.
You said you worked on Monkey Island. Do you have any other LucasArts games that you worked on back in that era?
I worked on The Secret of Monkey Island. I worked on the Indiana Jones and Last Crusade game. I worked on Loom. I worked on this game called Night Shift. I worked on The Secret Weapons of the Luftwaffe. Oh, yeah. I think that's it.
You have your favorite?
Monkey Island is just like, I love that game. If you guys haven't played it, they've remastered it. I think you can get it on various platforms now, and it still holds up. Really funny writing. And the gentleman who was involved in that, Tim Schafer, has his own video games company now called Double Fine. And then he hired me to be a voice actor on, what was the one with Jack Black?
Brutal Legend?
Yeah, Brutal Legend. So I did some work on Brutal Legend. But Tim Schafer's games have that same feel of the old days of Monkey Island. They're really good.
Okay. Let's go in the red shirt back here.
Oh, I heard a hello there. General Kenobi, you are a bold one.
Now, I know you've probably seen all the General Grievous memes from back in the day.
I've seen a lot of those memes. Yeah, they're amazing.
What was your first impression on those?
You know, I love memes in general. Like, there's a really good friend of mine in the audience here that has turned me on to a lot of memes, and like on Tumblr and whatnot. And I love that stuff. So when I saw the ones with General Grievous, I was like, yes. And there's the one that I really like, because the Christopher Robin trailer has Ewan McGregor like turning on a bench and saying like, hello there, to and Winnie the Pooh, and he like pulls out a bunch of lightsabers. Also one of them pulls out a bunch of honey pots. So good. So good. And then the funny thing is, by the way, I told this story to somebody else today, so sorry to hear it again, but when we were doing the Clone Wars series, there was a scene where Grievous jumps down and kind of surprises Obi-Wan, who's standing with his troops. And it's like, well, why don't we have him say hello there? So we've got, Grievous saying like, hello there! And so then I worked it out in the timeline, and that means that Grievous was the first person to say that in the timeline. So he turned Obi-Wan on saying that. So Grievous started it.
Okay, we're going to do one more, and I'm going to go black shirt right here against the speaker. Yeah, that's you.
All right. Last month, when we announced Clone Wars was saved, it was such an emotional, positive reaction. How gratifying was that for you and your crew?
huge gratifying about Clone Wars coming back. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen the video at Comic-Con when we announced.
The crowd went nuts.
Yeah, and Filoni was able to keep the wraps on that really well, and even to the moderator that was like talking to him there. Hugely gratifying. I mean, we all loved working on Clone Wars, and even though the job was, we were kind of in a bit of a fantasy land because of the budgets were so high. I mean, those shows in the last few seasons just looked like little movies. I mean, we had the 4-episode arcs, so we were great. And we shot in 2:3:5 aspect ratio. We had a full orchestral score, world-class voice actors, and sound design, and all that. So, adding to that story is huge. And we've got the composer is coming back. We've got the director of photography coming back. We've got the voice cast and sound crew and everybody. So we're all very excited to be working on that again. And that's all going at the same time. We're doing Resistance and Episode 9 and Clone Wars and video games. But yeah, it's a special thing. And to even know that it's been 10 years since that came out, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, love it.
I think that's a great place to end it. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a big hand. Matthew Wolf.
Thank you.
Please come see him at his table.
Thank you very much.